The Marysville bus took down a fentanyl manufacturing operation happening in a quiet suburban neighborhood.
Suburban Marysville seemed like a peaceful place until the military-style raids started on January 22nd. $155,000 and an arsenal of weapons were pulled out of a regular residence. This was a sophisticated cartel hub, but there is a massive twist you did not see coming.
Make no mistake, this jury determined he was a corrupt federal agent and he violated his oath and duties to protect those that he should have been investigating and arresting.
Just a day earlier, a veteran law officer was caught in a Buffalo courtroom for shielding these exact types of criminals. Yeah, about that. He was writing fake reports for 2 decades. The thing is, this agent is just one of many who chose the wrong side. Washington's breaking point. On January 22nd, 2026, the quiet streets of Marysville, Washington were shattered by the sound of heavy boots and barking orders. Homeland Security investigations moved in with a plan that had been months in the making. They were not looking for a small-time dealer or a petty thief. They were targeting a 29-year-old Mexican citizen named Luis Donaldo Galana Garcia. To anyone watching, Garcia looked like a normal guy, living a normal life in a quiet neighborhood. But the feds knew better. They had been tracking him since the summer of 2025, watching how he moved product across western Washington. When the agents finally broke through the door, they found exactly what they were looking for. $155,000 in cold, hard cash was piled up, ready to be sent back to the cartels in Mexico. But that was just the start of the haul. They pulled out 20 pounds of cocaine and 15 pounds of crystal methamphetamine. For those who do not know, 20 pounds of cocaine is about the weight of a standard car tire, but its value on the street is worth millions of dollars. They also found a collection of weapons hidden in the house. This was not a home anymore, it was a militarized hub for an international substance network. The crazy part is how comfortable Garcia felt. He was operating a massive distribution center in a place where people take their kids to the park and walk their dogs. This network was sophisticated. It used co-conspirators stationed at key points all over the state to make sure the substances moved fast and the money moved faster. Prosecutors say this ring was responsible for a huge portion of the illegal substances flowing through the Pacific Northwest. But here is the catch. Garcia did not seem worried about the police. He acted like he had some kind of invisible shield around his operation. Federal investigators spent hundreds of hours in the shadows, monitoring phone calls and tracking cars. They worked with the Border Patrol and the FBI to map out every single person Garcia talked to. They realized this was not just a guy selling on a street corner. This was a high-level operation with direct ties to the big cartels south of the border. Every gram of meth and every dollar seized was a blow to the cartel's bottom line. But as the agents were celebrating this big win, a much darker reality was surfacing in another part of the country. It turns out that some people inside the government were making these cartel operations possible. Garcia and his crew are now facing a mandatory minimum of 10 years in federal prison. That is a long time, but it is standard for the amount of substances they were caught with. People in the community are left wondering how many more houses like Garcia's are sitting on their blocks. The investigation revealed that the money was flowing out of Washington and back to Mexico almost as fast as the substances were coming in. It was a perfect cycle of profit and poison that seemed unstoppable until that January morning. But even with Garcia behind bars, the biggest threat was still hiding in plain sight within the halls of justice itself. So, here's the deal. The local bust was just one piece of a much larger and more terrifying puzzle. The Buffalo betrayal. Just 24 hours before the feds took down Garcia in Washington, A man named Joseph Bongiovanni stood in a courtroom in Buffalo, New York. Bongiovanni was not a cartel member or a street dealer. He was a veteran DEA agent with 20 years of service under his belt. He was the guy who was supposed to be the hero. Instead, a jury determined he was a corrupt federal agent who had completely violated his oath. He did not just take a small bribe here or there. He spent 2 decades protecting the very people he was paid to investigate and arrest. Bongiovanni had access to the most sensitive intelligence the United States government had on substance trafficking. He knew who the informants were, where the raids were going to happen, and which phone lines were being tapped. And he used every bit of that information to help his friends. He was specifically linked to a trafficking organization that grew into a massive network, with connections reaching from California all the way to Vancouver and New York City. He could have ended their operation before it even started. Instead, he chose to be their guardian angel. The details of his corruption are honestly disgusting. Bongiovanni wrote fake DEA reports to lead other investigators in the wrong direction. If an honest agent got too close to his criminal friends, Bongiovanni would file a report saying there was nothing to find. He even stole sensitive files from the DEA office to make sure evidence disappeared. But the worst part is what he did to the people who tried to help the law. He exposed 3 confidential informants, knowing exactly what cartels do to people they think are snitches. He basically signed their death warrants to keep his pockets full. During the trial, it came out that Bongiovanni was helping a former school teacher named Michael Masiccia move marijuana, cocaine, and fentanyl across the Northeast. He also covered for a strip club owner named Peter Jarris Jr., who had ties to both the Buffalo Mafia and a violent motorcycle club. These were not just businessmen. They were dangerous criminals running a trafficking ring that poisoned thousands of people. Bongiovanni made sure they stayed out of jail while he collected his share of the profits. He even told his fellow agents to stop looking at his friends and instead focus on minority communities to keep the heat off his operation. When it came time for sentencing, many people were shocked. Despite 2 decades of helping cartels and organized crime, the judge only gave Bongiovanni 5 years in federal prison. That is half the time that a street dealer like Garcia faces for one single operation. It feels like a slap on the wrist for someone who betrayed the entire country. Bongiovanni's actions allowed massive amounts of substances to hit the streets, and he knowingly put lives in danger every single time he leaked a secret. The public trust was shattered, and many feel that 5 years is nowhere near enough for the damage he caused. What most people do not realize is that Bongiovanni is not the only one playing both sides of the fence. 17 rotten apples. Bongiovanni is not just one bad apple. The crazy part is that he is part of a growing list of federal agents who have been caught in the last 10 years. At least 17 DEA agents have been brought up on federal corruption charges in that time. That is 17 people with high-level security clearances, guns, and the power to ruin lives, all working for the cartels. When you think about the math, it gets really scary. If one agent can protect a substance ring for 20 years, what can 17 agents do? They can tip off leaders before raids, expose every informant we have, and make sure the cartel stays untouchable. Just last month, another agent named Paul Campo was charged with something even more extreme. He was not just taking bribes, he was allegedly conspiring to launder millions of substance dollars. Even worse, he was helping a Mexican cartel get their hands on military-grade firearms and explosives. We are talking about the kind of weapons used in actual wars. This is what the honest agents at ICE and DACE are fighting against every day. They are not just going up against guys in the jungle. They are going up against people sitting in the office next to them, who might be selling them out for a suitcase full of cash. This internal corruption creates a guerrilla-type war, where the rules are constantly changing, because the enemy knows our playbook. These corrupt agents are experts in DIA policies and procedures. They know exactly how to hide money so it does not trigger a red flag. They know how to talk to judges to get warrants dismissed. When they sell that knowledge to a cartel like Sinaloa or Jalisco New Generation, they make those cartels nearly impossible to beat. It turns the entire justice system into a joke, where the highest bidder wins. Frank Tarantino, a high-ranking DIA official, tried to say that the Bongiovanni sentencing sends a powerful message. He told reporters that anyone who betrays the badge will be held accountable. But let's be real. Is 5 years for 20 years of treason really accountable? To a cartel leader, that looks like a great deal. They can pay an agent a few $1,000,000, and even if the agent gets caught, they are out in a few years to enjoy their hidden money. That is not a deterrent. It is just a cost of doing business. This is why the cartels have felt so untouchable for so long. The honest agents are left in a terrible position. They go out on dangerous raids like the one in Marysville, never knowing if the target was tipped off 5 minutes before they arrived. They risk their lives to take 20 pounds of cocaine off the street, while someone in their own agency is making sure 2,000 pounds gets through another port. This systemic rot is what allows the substance crisis to keep growing, despite all the billions of dollars we spend on the substance war every year. Without a major change, the cartels will keep winning because they have the best players on both teams. Basically, the gatekeepers are the ones leaving the doors wide open for the enemy to walk through. The Great Cleanup. Because the old way of doing things was clearly failing, the current administration has taken a completely different approach. There is no more room for compromise or soft sentencing when it comes to the safety of American communities. The focus has shifted to a no-games policy that targets both the traffickers and the corruption that lets them thrive. President Trump has been very clear that the goal is not just to arrest people, but to completely eliminate the threat. He has talked about a much more aggressive stance, saying that people bringing poison into the country should face the ultimate consequence. Under this new leadership, the Department of Homeland Security has seen some massive numbers. They have removed more than 670,000 illegal aliens from American soil. This list includes murderers, members of violent gangs, and high-level substance traffickers. But the most interesting part is that an estimated 2,200,000 more people have chosen to leave on their own. They are self-deporting because they realize the rules have changed. When they see that the government is actually serious about enforcement, the risk of staying becomes too high for them to handle. In just the first year of this administration, ICE arrested over 7,000 gang members who were terrorizing local neighborhoods. They also caught 1,416 known or suspected terrorists. Out of those, they have already removed 1,392 of them from the country. This is a huge shift from the previous years when sanctuary policies and catch and release programs made it easy for criminals to stay in the system forever. Now, the handcuffs are off for the good guys, and they are dismantling cartel networks from coast to coast. The administration is also targeting the financial heart of the cartels. By working with international partners and using new executive orders, they are freezing the assets of these criminal organizations before the money can ever get back to Mexico. They are using Executive Order 14,159, which officially labels the border crisis as an invasion. This gives law enforcement more power to act quickly and decisively. It also means that corrupt agents like Bongiovanni are being watched much more closely. The public trust is no longer just a phrase. It is a requirement that is being strictly enforced. This aggressive strategy is already showing results in places like Washington and Buffalo. When the cartels see their leaders getting arrested and their money getting seized, they start to panic. They rely on the system being slow and corrupt to survive. When the system becomes fast and honest, the cartels have nowhere to hide. The goal is to make the United States the most difficult place on earth for a substance trafficker to operate. It is about taking back the streets and making sure that the people wearing the badge are actually on the side of the citizens. What do you think about a dirty agent getting only 5 years while the dealer gets 10? Should we have much harsher rules for those who sell out their own country? Let us know what you think in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the fight against the cartels.